Hello, fellow cyborgs, and welcome to my favorite books of 2018. There are 6 because I only read 2 5-star books in 2018, and I looked very hard at the 30 4-star ratings that I gave this year and said, you know what? 4 of you I think are going to be memorable and sustaining forevermore. The rest of you, I'm not quite sure. We'll have to reread and see. So I'm going to start with the number 6 slot and work my way up to the number 1. May you enjoy and pick up these books. Slot number 6 goes to a poetry collection. This is Poems Bewitched and Haunted and Everyman's Library Pocket Poets. It was selected and edited by John Hollander. As it says on the tin, this is a collection of spooky, horrifying poems to get you into the Halloween sort of mood and stuff. This did what it set out to do. It made me kind of spooked out. There were a lot of really beautiful poems in here and a lot of varied different time periods and styles of the poems, and I also liked how it was divided up by subject. That was the word. The subjects included in here are hags and beauties, dangerous procedures, dangerous venues, dangerous wooers, other apparitions, ceremonials, a choice of ghosts, the lighter side. So there were a lot of things that I put little stars next to that I really enjoyed, and I hope to do a more specific spotlight here and give you a flavor of the poems in a future video. Check this out. This has really been a delight, and it really helped me feel in the spooky mood all the way through October. Coming in at number 5 is The Selected Stories of Saki. This is a short story collection, and this is part of the Everyman's Pocket Classics edition. This was such a solid 4-star read. Saki's stories tiptoe between the two ends of the spectrum. There's like none in between. They're either like spooky horrifying or hilarious. There were so many in here that I super enjoyed. There are varying lengths of these stories. Some of them are 5 pages long, some others are longer. These are golden afternoon, early 1900s sorts of time period for these stories. That's when Saki was writing. He was killed in World War I, so he didn't have as much time on this earth to give us more amazing stories. But if you have not heard of Saki and you can get a giggle out of short stories and that's something that would amuse you, or you like suddenly being horrified and in a completely different world, you really need to give him a try. I was so impressed. I did not expect to enjoy this as much as I did. Just kind of came out of left field, and I don't think I will cease to enjoy these stories as much as I did on the first reading. Speaking of the spooks, number 4 is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This was one of the first books that I read in the new year, I believe, or not in the last new year. I believe I finished this in early February or late January. This is the first Shirley Jackson that I have read, and by far still my favorite. I loved how Shirley Jackson's succinct writing style and fairly simple writing style as well, you could say, was easily picked apart and analyzed, and it made me feel so smart. I loved how this was spooky but did not keep me up with nightmares, and I loved how this was more psychological horror than anything else and kept me guessing about what was real and what was actually going on the whole time. Really enjoyed this. Wish that I could have watched the new Netflix series, but it was far too scary and I couldn't. But this definitely got me on the Shirley Jackson kick. I read 2 more of her novels in 2018, but this one still takes the tops from me. Looking forward to reading even more from her bibliography in the future. Number 3 spot goes to Joyland by Stephen King, which I read in August during the Stephen King Reading Month hosted by Becky M. This almost got 5 stars from me. It made me cry and feel things. This is about nostalgia. This is about an amusement park, carnival hybrid, and summertime, and not knowing what you want to do while you're in college, and then being heartbroken and meeting some strangers who turn out to be lovely friends, and then there's a ghost and a serial killer. Bonus! This just had so much more emotional depth than I was expecting. It was relatively short, which I think is an asset when it comes to Stephen King novels from the few that I've read, and just so incredibly enjoyable. This kind of gave me the same sort of nostalgia feelings for things that I've never experienced myself as The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, but this is definitely more based in reality And as I said, there is a serial killer as well. But yes, if Goodreads did half stars and if I believed in that, this would have received a 4.5 star from me. Really, really good. Don't miss this out. Even if you're not a Stephen King fan, even if you're not a fan of horror, give it a try. Now on to the 5 stars. If you remember what they were, these will come as no surprise. Our number 2 slot, Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. This is a short young adult novel that is in turns hysterical about the reality of and the ridiculousness of high school, and also traumatizing in the content that this deals with. But traumatizing, not actually traumatizing. Bad stuff happens and you need to talk about it. And you don't want to think about the bad stuff, but it's important that you talk about it. And this is kind of what that book says, is its thesis. Again, like I said, I knew this was going to be important. I knew it was going to talk about important things, but I didn't expect it to be so fun to read. I didn't expect to laugh at the same time that I cringed. I loved the realistic portrayal of PTSD in here, and trauma and healing and repressed kind of memories, and just, I felt a little bit like a detective who didn't really want to know the answer to my questions. And I read this so fast. I read it in like 2 sittings over 2 days, which rarely happens to me, even in YA, even short books. It normally takes me at least 4. This was just so enjoyable. I definitely need to, or I want to, try more by Halse Anderson. It's just a matter of time, but I'm so glad that I picked this up on the recommendation of Acacia. I never would have if she hadn't said on her channel multiple times to read this. It was so great. It was wonderful. Everyone needs to read it. I don't care who you are. You need to give it a try. It's great. And I'm not going to drum roll because my mic will make it way too loud for you, but the first number 1 primo most loved read of the year for me, Lillis Brewed by Octavia Butler. So Lillis Brewed is the entire Xenogenesis trilogy all bound up into one by Grand Central Publishing. They are doing all of her books in these bind-ups, and the series all come together. A lot of her books are quite short, so it actually works out. So this is a 600-page, 700 and some page tome of these 3 novels that starts with Dawn, then Adulthood Rights, then Imago, making up the Xenogenesis trilogy. In the first novel, we follow Lilith, who has been captured, rescued, kidnapped by aliens who are trying to save the human race after it has self-destructed, but there's a price to pay. Lilith has to decide where she wants to fall in the future of the human race. Does she want to be at peace with the aliens' decision that humans aren't going to look like humans anymore? Is she going to fight for the purity of humanity? Is she going to be somewhere in the middle, cooperative but reluctantly? And what actually are the aliens planning on doing? I loved the Owen Collie, those are the aliens, so much. I found that they were so interesting and believable and alien. I loved all of the moral ambiguity in this book, and as the novels go on, it just gets grayer and grayer and grayer, and the conversations I was having with Acacia, I would start out talking to her with one opinion and end up talking myself into another opinion, and I feel like the rereadability of Butler's stories, because of these ethical quandaries and the moral ambiguity that she just loves to play with, is just, you will reread these books forever and never really make up your mind. So yeah, this is definitely not an easy read. The subject matter can get really like, what? But it was a relatively fast read. I was looking forward to reading this and to turning the page every time I sat down to it. And that is really what I need to give a book 5 stars is, am I excited to return to this world? Do I want to not stop reading when I'm reading it? And does it make me ask questions? Can I reread this? There's more than, that's a lot to ask for a book, but Lillis Brewed delivered. So if you haven't read any Octavia Butler, you don't have to start here, but you need to read some Octavia E. Butler. She's really great. She's like awesome. Like, I'm going to read all of her stuff eventually. That kind of awesome. So here are the 6 books that made my reading year great and palatable. My reading year wasn't great, but these were the ones that was like, no, you like reading. Remember, you like reading. If you haven't picked any of them up, and if I have convinced you, please let me know. I love to hear when I thrust books on people's lives. I highly recommend that you pick these up. They are really amazing. Please let me know in the comments down below your #1 read of the year and tell me why I need to put that on my TBR. And until next time, continue to be lovely. Really?